Hello guys and welcome back to Connor Reads. Merry Christmas to you. The book we're covering today is part one of a Crown of Swords in Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series. This is going to consist of a brief summary of what I've read so far, my reaction and predictions going forwards. So let's hop into it. Now there are obviously going to be spoilers from the outset and throughout, so if you haven't read this book, pause the video, go read the book. If you have read the book, welcome. I'm so excited to talk to you about this one. As always, we start with an incredible introduction sequence. Now, the intros to these books are so long. I believe this one's like 50 or 60 pages, which isn't quite as long as the one before, but we do cover a few storylines. The first one we hop to is Elaida as the Amirlan seat in the White Tower. Now, I want to say Elaida is essentially the manifestation of everything that is wrong with the Aes Sedai. She's greedy, she's egotistical, and just to prove that point, what she's decided to do is build a palace which no Amirlan seat has ever had before. And not only is she building a palace, it is going to be just a little bit taller than the White Tower, just to show where her ego's at. Now we join her and she's having a meeting with Alvarin, and she has a foretelling in this meeting. Now in the foretelling, she says that the White Tower is going to be whole, and that the Black Tower is going to have fire and blood like strewn upon it, and sisters on the grounds of, I assume, the Black Tower whilst that is happening. Now, we've had quite a few like foretellings and predictions previously, and what we know is that really they could mean absolutely anything. So my predictions, based on her predictions, I suppose, are that obviously the White Tower will become whole because she has predicted it, and the prediction is always correct. But I believe it will be whole under the rule of Egwene as the Amirlan seat. We last left Egwene, she was traveling across to Tarvalon, I believe anyway, with everybody from Saladar, including Gareth Byrne and his army, and the band that Matt left to go to Ebu Dar. And I think in this book, she's going to wrestle control of the White Tower away from Elaida. And based on this prophecy, she's going to do it quite cleanly. Now, the Black Tower may have fire and blood, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be destroyed. Now, over here, we have a sticky situation. We have Mazrim Taim and the Asha'man. We also have, if I'm not mistaken, over there in Caemlyn, we have the Aes Sedai that Egwene has sent over there still. And we also have the Aes Sedai that Elaida sent, so the Reds. And the Reds were clearly behind the orchestration of Chrysler, I believe you pronounce her name, declaring herself queen while Rand was gone. And he will eventually find out about that, and I think he will want to speak to them. Before that happens, I believe that Mazrim Taim is going to cause a lot of problems. I think what he will do is, he obviously has a lot of disdain for Aes Sedai. I think he's going to try and wrestle control of the Asha'man away from Rand, which I think he may get half of them at least, because he's trained all of them and probably has a much better relationship with them. And once he's wrestled that control, I think he's going to try and take revenge on the Aes Sedai that are in Caemlyn. Now this could be an absolute disaster. The Aes Sedai are going to retaliate because they're already upset, I would guess, with the Asha'man for saving Rand, the Aes Sedai who'd come from the White Tower, that is anyway, the Reds. And I believe there's going to be some kind of war fought in the Black Tower. I don't think that the Asha'man will necessarily lose, but I think there may be a split and a wrestle for power for the Asha'man between Mazrim Taim and also Rand. However, I would say the Aes Sedai that are loyal to Egwene, our Amirlan seat, will most likely end up on the side of the Asha'man and Rand as well. So it's going to be a sticky one, and I'm excited for those scenes. I also believe that Elaida does not make it out of this book. I think that we're going to see the end of Elaida here. She's going to cause all types of problems before that, because she is just narcissistic and really seems just quite evil. However, she is mentioned as having very much confidence in herself, being able to split her enemies like a rotten melon, I believe it was described, which is a strange way to describe things. So I think she has some kind of mysterious plan and secret weapon. My guess for that would be something that's been left in the tower for a long time that maybe a lot of people have forgotten about. The other option is maybe she is in league with Savannah still somehow, and Savannah has that stone that she kept, that she was given in the intro of the book previously, some 1,000 pages ago. It would seem that this stone is alluded to having some kind of power, being able to, imprison somebody, or maybe even putting a compulsion on somebody, because those are the only two things I could see lining up with Savannah's plan. And obviously Savannah's plan is to have Rand, the Dragon Reborn, as her husband, because she is making a play for power and essentially has been what looks like her entire life. Now, I was trying to predict the downfall of Savannah. I mean, the clear and obvious way would be she tries to capture Rand and Rand destroys her. But I want to go a little bit more far-fetched. I think Savannah's whole life has really been, that recently anyway, has really been breaking down the norms of the Aiel. She is running the Aiel, which is normally, a male's job. She's been accepted as a wise one, even though she hasn't been into Ruidin. Which is wild, and she's really breaking a lot of these traditions that Aiel have. I think that what would be poetic is to have one of the other wise ones, maybe Amis, for example, kill Savannah. Now, from everything we've read already, that's never going to happen. Aiel don't attack wise ones, and wise ones, even if they're in completely different factions that are at war, they still treat each other with respect and move between camps. So Savannah's whole life has been breaking tradition. So I think it would be really fitting for her to be destroyed by the wise ones, which would probably be, the last tradition. Well, not the last tradition, but it would probably be a huge tradition to break. It seems one that is like deeply ingrained in Aiel. But it was foretold that the Aiel would be broken, and it would be broken by Rand, and I suppose this would be a factor contributing to it. So I'm probably way off with this one, but I think it would be quite poetic for Savannah to reach her end by another wise one. Moving forwards, we also had a lot of time spent with Pedron Niall. Pedron Niall was murdered. I think assassinated would probably be the correct way to describe it. And I do have to say that I did predict this, and it was quite obvious. Like, there seems to be such a high level of corruption everywhere, but especially within the Children of the Light. Now, just before his murder, he was given a note from somebody in Tanchico, I believe it was, and they speak of, a second ugly beast rearing its head. Now, the only things I could think of is maybe that is some kind of Forsaken, or something that's going to cause as much trouble as Rand, is what it was described as. The only two things I can imagine causing as much trouble as Rand is maybe another Forsaken, which I doubt, because I think most of them are accounted for now, or maybe the Seanchan are going to land there. Now, in my last video, I predicted the Seanchan would arrive in Ebu Dar, but I don't think anything's stopping them arriving in a couple of places. Like, they were teased in the first couple of books, and I know that they're going to be really important to the storyline for a couple of reasons. Number one, Matt seems to be tied to them because of his premonition or prediction that he is going to marry the daughter of the Nine Moons, I believe. And the second thing is they're just going to be a really good way for Rand to unite the factions on this mainland that we're following the story of, because the Seanchan landing is going to be a really big deal. So maybe some warring factions don't want to be taken over by the Seanchan. It's going to make his job a little bit easier to unite them initially. So my guess is that the beast over there in Tanchico that he receives the message of would either be a Forsaken, or it's going to be the landing of the Seanchan. From there, we move into the aftermath of rescuing the dragon from the Aes Sedai sent by the White Tower. A lot of this is seen through Perrin, and I have to say that Perrin's ability to smell people's true feelings and true emotions makes for such interesting reading, and it also makes the job as a reader a little bit easier. And I kind of wished, I was reading it and I was like, I kind of wish I had this ability myself, but I do think it's probably a double-edged sword. Now, with that smelling ability, it really just adds multiple layers to the story, because we will have, for example, somebody talking, and we'll see what they want everyone to see, and then also via Perrin's ability to smell them, we'll be able to see what they actually mean. But that doesn't mean the person they're talking to can see that. So it does create lots of layers in the story. It's a really interesting plot device, and I'm loving it. And it allows us to confirm things that we already knew and see some things that we didn't. Now, Perrin is confused, and due to the fact that he can see Lews Therin inside of Rand, like the speed at which he changes his emotions and characteristics, and Perrin's just confused by it. Obviously, he doesn't know Lews Therin's in there. Interesting to read. We see how haughty the Aes Sedai are, and how much they expect people to go along with them, and even how well they hide their emotions. Some of them, sometimes fear, sometimes worry, sometimes anger behind that serene face of theirs. Now, somebody who's popped up quite a lot at the start of this book as well is Loyal. I love Loyal, and one thing that I thought while I was reading this is he's constantly trying to write notes for his book, and I had a really cool idea that maybe his notes for the book are what I'm reading. Is he going to be like the author of the Wheel of Time at the end? Now, I think it's not going to happen. And the reason for that is there's so many perspectives and pieces of information that he just isn't privy to. For example, like Padan Fain or the Forsaken, like how are we to know, or how is he to know, sorry, even further down the line, what they were up to, what they were thinking and what they did. So I doubt it, but it would be a really cool twist if that could happen. I also want to point out that Loyal is the most wholesome character in the whole book. I wish I had more friends like Loyal, and if Robert Jordan or Brandon Sanderson in the end kill off Loyal, I will probably cry. We also get a bit more page time, not from their perspective, but talking about and thinking about Aram. Now, Aram is I believe he was a tinker previously, who essentially decided to pick up a sword and hero worships Perrin and fail as well. I just think he's a bit of a strange character, mainly based around some of the things that Perrin noted in these early chapters. Even when he looks angry, he doesn't have a smell of anger. He seems like a very composed young man. He's managed to pick up the ability to fight with a sword really, really quickly, even though he's never even picked up a sword before in his life. I just feel like there's more to him than meets the eye. So I don't have a prediction for him, so to speak, because there's not a ton of information for him, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe he's just a talented dude, but I do predict that I'll be keeping a close eye on him moving forwards. Mazrim Taim is not to be trusted. Now, Lews Therin, he seems to hate everybody, especially anyone who can channel, but he seems to have some over-the-top aggressive and feral hate for Mazrim Taim. As I said previously, I predict that Mazrim Taim will try to wrestle control of the Asha'man away from Rand, and I think he may have some success there because he's the one training them. And I think we're going to see that sooner rather than later, because we see from Perrin sniffing Mazrim Taim and smelling his emotions as he talks, he has a deep, deep, deep hatred for Aes Sedai, and even seems a deep level of hatred and frustration towards Rand as well. And I just don't think a guy like that, who has an opportunity to be so powerful, will let that lay and do nothing about that for a long period of time. Now, a theme at the start of this book is Rand dealing with the Aes Sedai very eloquently and effectively. I don't think that's going to last too long. I do believe once Egwene unites the White Tower, which is, I hope that's going to happen, I think what she'll do is she will hopefully lay down a new foundation for the Aes Sedai, but she'll definitely give them some of their power back and some of their pride back. For right now, it's awesome to see the Aes Sedai essentially ignored and told what to do, and they have to listen. Now, a lot of them are under the protection of the Wise Ones, some of them actually as prisoners, and some of them who have sworn fealty. And it just feels good after reading an entire book of characters who I don't really like. There's only one or two Aes Sedai who I do really like, who are running the show. They ignore everybody, do whatever they want all the time, and have this huge ego. So for them now to be put in their place, even if it is for a short while, it's so refreshing to read. It's like when you had that person that you hate but everyone else think is awesome, and you're like, how does no one see this? And then finally everyone sees them for what they are, and you just feel so vindicated about it. Rand, more than ever, is dealing with this like somebody on a mission. And I have some newfound respect for him. And the reason for that is because you can see he's desperately trying to hold on to his compassion. Like, he still doesn't want to order executions for people. He really is just a good guy and a good kid who's had greatness thrust upon him. However, it's clear that his brutal time in the hands of the Aes Sedai, and the beatings and the thirst and the hunger and the cramped in the box and their intentions, really have put the harsh reality of the world, and also who he is and his role in this world, into perspective for him. Now, I predict that we are going to see Lews Therin eventually grab hold of the power before Rand can grab hold of it, and I think it will be a disaster, because we've seen at the start of this book a lot of talk of Rand trying to stop Lews Therin from grabbing hold of the power. And he's like, he also said he isn't sure whether he'll be able to take it back off of him if he gets a hold of it. So I believe that Lews Therin, we will see him grab the power before Rand at some point. And what that probably means is he'll probably grab it in fury and anger, and he will use it to kill or steal, probably kill, because stealing isn't final anymore, either an Asha'man, Mazrim Taim, a Forsaken, hopefully a Forsaken, or maybe an Aes Sedai, and I feel like it's quite likely to be an Aes Sedai, and it's just going to cause so many problems for Rand moving forwards, and he's probably going to have to start maybe doubling down or explaining to somebody what's going on in his head. We have had some really cool paragraphs dedicated towards Rand trying to figure out why Lews Therin is in his head. And I don't have any solid ideas, which is frustrating, but I feel like there is a real obvious overarching link between the pattern, the power, and people being reborn. And I think once I've finished these books, and then if I decide to do a read through, which I obviously will at some point because they're such badass books, I think it will be quite obvious by this point if you know what you're looking for. But unfortunately, I have no idea what I'm looking for. The only thing I feel like I might be onto is I think that maybe what happened in the breaking of the world was those who had the male half of the power, maybe they all begin to hear the people who they were previously, because it was stated by Rand that he thought that everybody was constantly reborn. You know, once you die, you go to Teleram and then you're reborn as somebody else eventually. And if that is the case, then maybe that's what sent everybody crazy who could channel. Like, they all of a sudden had all the voices in their head of the people who they had been previously and the people they're reborn as well. And that's just, you know, my first thoughts on it. It's really my first time trying to piece together what that's all about, and I'm definitely nowhere near it, but I'll continue to think on that because it is going to be so interesting how he ties all of that together, and how the pattern, the power, people being reborn, you know, the overarching logic behind it, or maybe it's not that logical, but the overarching, you know, theme or story behind it is going to be so interesting to finally understand. I just want to know it. I just want to know it all already, but, you know, read and find out, as everyone always says in the comments. So moving forwards, it seems that Rand is really ready in that army to push into Ilion. It seems like we're going to have that battle with Samael, which is awesome. And it seems also like, unless he can convince Perrin to lead the army, we really need the Ebu Dar scenario to resolve itself quickly, and for at least Mat and Elaine to get back to Caemlyn as fast as possible. Elaine so she can be crowned and run the 2 thrones that Rand has picked out for her. And obviously she'll bring Avinda with her as well, so that Rand can have all of his women around him. And also we need Mat to lead the army, I believe. I don't think there's anyone else better suited to it. Maybe Gareth Byrne. But yeah, it seems like that's how that's going to go down, and I'm really excited to read that. And guys, that's everything from me. It's been an absolute pleasure this year doing these videos and interacting with you guys. I am going to continue to read, but I'm going away. So we're driving to New York to visit my wife's family. So I'm going to be away for at least a week to 10 days. So the next video may just be a completed video for this book. We shall see, because I doubt I can refrain from reading it that entire duration. I hope you guys have an amazing new year and a great Christmas as well. And yeah, my goal next year is obviously to complete these books and continue to be a part of the community, and then, you know, hear what else you guys love to read and go from there. If you've enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. Send this to anyone who loves Wheel of Time as well. We'd love to have them as part of the community. And yeah, have an amazing day.